They told you there were 12 heavens, 12 eons, 12 constellations, 12 gates in the great city. But what if they left one out? What if there was a hidden 13th, unspoken, unwritten, unnamed, because it was too powerful to be mapped, too real to be controlled? What if everything you've ever searched for, the peace that escapes you, the freedom that flickers like a dying flame, was never missing at all? It was waiting, buried inside a realm you were never meant to remember. This video isn't for those satisfied with doctrine. It's not for those content with recycled stories or half-light truths. This is for the soul that's been restless. The one who looks at the stars and feels different. Like you don't belong here. Like you're walking through a story you didn't write. If you felt that, if something deep in you aches for a home you can't name, keep listening. You're not crazy, you're remembering. And what you're remembering is the 13th Aeon. The Gnostics spoke of Eons, divine emanations, living aspects of Source that shaped the heavenly Pleroma before the fall. They named Sophia, Christos, Barbello, the mind, the truth, the word. But what if the greatest of them was never given a name? What if beyond even the Pleroma, beyond the eons that gave rise to thought and time and light itself, there existed a final realm, a womb of pure return, untouched by polarity or pain? That is the 13th Aeon, and it's not just out there, it's what you are. Most teachings stop at 12. 12 is the system, the matrix, the program. From the 12 cranial nerves to the 12 disciples, from 12 zodiac signs to the 12 tribes of Israel, it's all part of a cycle. But the 13th is the one that breaks the wheel. It's the spiral, the key, the escape hatch they buried under centuries of forgetfulness. You don't climb to it, you don't earn it, you remember it. And when you do, the illusion begins to unravel. Imagine a realm of no resistance, where the soul doesn't move forward or backward but radiates from the center, where there are no opposites, no battle between light and dark, only wholeness, stillness, the original silence from which all sound was born. This is not heaven. This is not nirvana. This is the realm before the idea of separation, the source of all that is, and the destination of all that return. In the Gospel of Mary, the soul ascends past the powers of fear, desire, and ignorance. But the text stops before it names what comes next. That's because what comes next can't be named. The 13th Aeon isn't a level, it's a remembering, a return to the preform, where identity dissolves, but presence remains. It's the place where you're no longer seeking to awaken, because you are the awakening itself. Why haven't you heard about it? Because nothing controlled can touch it. No church can codify it. No system can sell it. The 13th Aeon is dangerous to the Matrix because it reminds you that you are not trapped. You are not fallen. You are not even on a path. You are the origin. And when you wake up to that, the false god loses his grip. So if you've been waiting for something, some sign, some moment, some message to break the illusion, you just found it. You didn't click this video by chance. Your soul brought you here because you're ready to remember. The 13th Aeon is not coming. It's not distant. It's here. And it's been whispering your name through every heartbeat, every breath, every dream. Listen closely, because what comes next will change everything. 12 is a number that binds. It loops. It closes systems. In sacred geometry, 12 forms the zodiac, a perfect wheel, repeating endlessly. In ancient temples, 12 pillars held up the dome. The 12 disciples circled Christ like markers of time around the sun. It's not accidental. 12 is the cosmic lock. It keeps the dream in motion, the simulation stable, but outside the wheel, outside the repetition, stands the one they never spoke of. The 13th, the unnamed, the awakener. The ancients knew. In Babylonian myth, there were 12 celestial gods, and one silent god outside them all. In Egyptian mysteries, 12 gates guarded the duat, but the 13th was the rising sun, the return to the eternal. In Gnostic cosmology, the 12 eons operate within the Pleroma, but beyond them, silence, a shimmering stillness. The 13th Aeon isn't just another layer. It's the dimension that destroys dimensions, not with force, but with remembrance. Why 12? Because it mimics the design of the matrix itself. The matrix isn't just digital, it's metaphysical. It's the layering of systems on systems until you no longer see the light through the veils. Time, ego, fear, desire, all wrapped in divine architecture. And yet, the architects of illusion forgot one truth. The soul doesn't obey grids. It sings in spirals. It dreams in frequencies. And when it hears the call of the 13th, the illusion begins to fracture. The 13th is always the intruder, the glitch, the sacred rebel. The 13th card in the tarot is death, the end of the cycle. The 13th sign of the zodiac, Ophiuchus, is the serpent bearer, the one who holds both poison and healing in his hands. The 13th gate is not a continuation, it's a departure, and that's why they've buried it, twisted it, silenced it. Because if you remembered it, you'd stop playing the game. This is not numerology. This is archetypal coding. Your soul was encoded with this truth long before your mind could decode it. That's why you've always felt like you were walking outside the circle. That's why you don't quite fit into the systems. Religious, academic, cultural. You weren't made for the wheel. You were made to walk beyond it. When Jesus said, "I am not of this world," he wasn't being poetic. He was mapping the soul's remembrance of the 13th. The true Christos force doesn't operate within the 12. It descends through them to remind us of what we are beyond form. And Sophia, the fallen Aeon, is the very yearning to return, not to the 12, but to the 13th. And here's the secret. The 13th Aeon isn't a reward for the pure or a throne for the enlightened. It's a field of stillness accessible right now if you stop identifying with the architecture around you. It's not about climbing higher. It's about letting go of the climb. It's about seeing that the wheel is an illusion, beautiful, intricate, sacred, but still an illusion. So if you feel like the whole world is spinning around you and nothing makes sense anymore, good. You're waking up. You're seeing the 12 for what they are, a holding pattern, and you're beginning to feel the pull of the 13th. Still, silent, shining behind the veil. Stay with me. Because what lies just beyond this wheel will rewrite everything you've ever believed about God, time, and yourself. To step into the 13th Aeon is to vanish, and yet, for the first time, truly exist. Here, there are no names, no roles, no past, no future, just presence so vast and full it consumes every mask you've ever worn. This is not the end of self. It is the end of illusion, the end of the simulation of self. In this Aeon, you don't discover who you are. You unbecome everything you're not, and what remains is divine. All 12 Aeons operate within contrast, life and death, light and shadow, form and formless. Each one is a mirror. But the 13th holds no mirror. There is nothing to reflect because there is only oneness, pre-reflection, pre-fragmentation. It is the original silence before the word, the pause before creation, the breath before the birth of duality. It is source memory, pure consciousness without fracture. In the Apocryphon of John, it is hinted that Barbello, the first thought, is surrounded by eons of light, emanations of divine essence. But even Barbello, the womb of the all, moves within the Pleroma. The 13th Aeon is outside. It is the hidden light behind the light, the abyss beyond even the fullness. You cannot travel there. You can only awaken there because you were never apart from it. You only believed you were. This is why the Matrix had to keep you naming yourself. Student, seeker, sinner, saint. The ego is the guard at the gate. The moment you stop clinging to an identity, you slip through the bars unnoticed. That's how the soul re-enters the 13th, not with triumph, but with surrender. You don't storm the gates. You dissolve into the silence they surround. The 13th Aeon cannot be earned. You cannot ascend into it through effort. That's the trap of the 12, always reaching, always climbing, always becoming. But the 13th is the great undoing. It's the paradox of the path, that all you're seeking was a spiral designed to bring you back to where you never left. The treasure wasn't at the top of the ladder. The treasure was the one climbing it, waking up. In mystical terms, this is the void, not emptiness but full presence, not nihilism but eternity without form. It is the place where Sophia remembers her origin, where the logos becomes still, where the yearning ends and the being begins. It is the home beyond heaven, the truth behind the veil of opposites. It is you before time. But who could profit from teaching this? What institution could survive if you knew your liberation was within? That's why the 13th Aeon was erased. The Gnostics whispered it, the mystics hinted at it. But the empire built on fear had to bury it. Because once you taste the truth of your being, your eternal, unfractured presence, nothing can rule you. Not fear, not death, not even God as they've sold him. You are not here to perfect your identity. You are here to dissolve the illusion that you were ever separate. And when that illusion fades, the 13th Aeon rises. Not above you, not before you, but as you. Not a place, not a goal, a revelation. And once seen, the matrix crumbles. The myth of Sophia, her descent, her sorrow, her entrapment, was never a tragedy. It was a map, a secret code buried in story form. Because Sophia didn't fall by accident. She fell so you could rise. She descended from the Pleroma, not in error but in offering, planting the seed of the 13th Aeon deep within the illusion. She became the memory encoded in every soul that longs to return. The church told you her fall was shameful, that she gave birth to the demiurge in ignorance. But they never told you the rest. That Sophia's suffering opened a hidden gate, that her fragmentation embedded the key inside you. The serpent, the fall, the forbidden knowledge. None of it was evil. It was encrypted truth, a divine failsafe, because in the place furthest from light, she hid the ladder back. Jacob saw that ladder in a dream, but it wasn't made of rungs and rails. It was frequency. It was remembrance. Angels ascending and descending were metaphors for soul states, dimensional bleed-throughs, the oscillation of spirit through density and release. What Jacob saw was the path Sophia encoded, the return from density to light, not through religion, but through resonance. The 13th Aeon lives at the center of this spiral, and Sophia, the Divine Mother, holds the gate. That's why the Archons feared her. That's why they erased her. Because the feminine awakens not through war but through knowing. She doesn't fight the system, she outgrows it. She doesn't destroy the matrix, she renders it irrelevant. And when enough souls awaken that way, the game ends. Every pain you've endured is a breadcrumb, every tear, a compass. Sophia doesn't rescue you, she reminds you. She sings the forgotten music of the Aeons through your brokenness until you realize the crack was the doorway. That's the paradox of the 13th. It's not beyond the brokenness. It is the brokenness, awakened. It's not the light at the end of the tunnel. It's the light that was hiding in the tunnel all along. You weren't cursed. You were sent on a mission of remembrance. The fragmentation you've suffered, emotionally, spiritually, generationally, isn't punishment. It's a seed case. When it breaks open, what spills out is not ruin, but light. Sophia doesn't ascend by rejecting the world. She ascends by embracing it until it transforms. And you are her echo, her fragment, her chance to remember. The return to the 13th doesn't look like escape. It looks like embodiment. It's not transcendence. It's full presence. You stop running from the world and realize you are the world. And when you meet it with open eyes and an open heart, the illusion dissolves. The ladder doesn't lead away, it rises within. So if you felt abandoned, lost, far from home, know this: you were never far. The veil was thin, the path was hidden in your own ache. And Sophia, through her sorrow, planted the map not in the stars, but in your soul. Let her lead you. The door to the 13th Aeon is not in heaven, it's behind your heart. The ladder Jacob saw was not an external construct. It wasn't built in the desert or floating in the sky. That radiant spiral of ascent was a mirror of the soul's anatomy. What he witnessed was his own being awakening, his own temple aligning with realms beyond. The ladder was a map of inner elevation, a sacred geometry of return coded in light, rising spine to crown, heart to heaven. You were taught to look for God outside yourself, but the true sanctuary, the only real tabernacle, is built of breath and memory, silence and light. The chakras, the Sephirot, the energy centers of Kabbalah, Taoism, Kundalini, all echo the same truth. The ladder is the body made holy, and the angels ascending and descending, they are states of being, vibrating faster or slower depending on the soul's frequency. At the base, fear, density, confusion, the realm of fragmentation. But as you rise, through compassion, through courage, through gnosis, you begin to ascend the inner realms. The body becomes translucent. Thought becomes vibration. The self becomes space. This is not metaphor, it is mystical architecture. The kingdom of heaven is not a location, it is a frequency match. The Hermetic texts tell us, as above, so below. But also, as within, so without. The ladder isn't a path away from Earth, it's a pattern hidden inside it. A code that reveals the earth itself was always sacred, that the descent into matter was never exile, but a disguised initiation. You incarnated not to escape this place, but to light it up from the inside. And the way home is through. The 13th Aeon begins when you stop ascending and start integrating. When you stop looking for portals and become the portal. When you stop climbing and realize the entire ladder was you, your breath, your backbone, your burning desire to wake up. The rungs aren't outside. They are made of moments. When you choose love over control, truth over comfort, stillness over distraction. This is why the ancient mystery schools guarded breathwork, silence, fasting, stillness. Because they knew when the ladder activates in you, you become unguardable. No Archon can contain a soul who's awakened their Merkaba. No matrix can trap a being who's aligned their temple. No fear can govern one who's returned to rhythm with the 13th. When Jacob awoke, he said, "Surely the Lord was in this place and I knew it not." That's not a line about a location. That's a revelation about perception. God wasn't out there. God was here, in him, around him, above and below, revealed only when the illusion collapsed. That moment of realization is ascension. So don't ask how to find the ladder. Ask what veils must fall for you to see that you are already on it. Every breath is a rung. Every act of presence a rise. You don't need wings. You need remembrance. You don't need escape. You need integration. And when the body becomes temple, the ladder unfolds from the spine of God in you. Have you ever looked around and felt nothing's real? The buildings, the headlines, the conversations echoing with pre-recorded scripts. It's like the world has been rehearsed without your consent. That strange sensation, that surreal whisper behind the veil, is not madness. It's memory. It's your soul brushing against the fabric of the matrix and remembering what came before. This world as it is not broken. It's manufactured, built by forces that needed your amnesia to fuel their dominion. The Matrix is not just a system of control, it's a system of distraction, a labyrinth of noise and chaos designed to keep you looping through trauma, identity, desire, fear, anything but awakening. And the moment you start remembering your source, the illusion starts glitching. The ancients didn't see this world as reality. They called it shadow, a projection, a mimicry of truth. Plato called it the cave. The Gnostics called it the kenoma, the emptiness. And they knew. You weren't meant to fix the illusion. You were meant to wake up inside it, not to destroy it with force, but to dissolve it with light. Your light. Every war, every trend, every political wave, these are emotional anchors, hooks for your energy. The Archons don't feed on flesh. They feed on attention, on belief, on fear. They have no power of their own, only the power you unconsciously give them. And that's what they fear most, you remembering your sovereignty. The 13th Aeon exists outside the simulation, but it's not somewhere you escape to. It's a lens you remember seeing through. When you stop reacting to the circus of control and start moving from stillness, everything shifts. Your timeline shifts. Synchronicities multiply. The dream starts to bend around you instead of you bending to it. This is why the world is getting louder, more chaotic, more absurd. Because the matrix is collapsing, and it needs your fear to survive the fall. But you don't owe it your energy. You don't need to fix its stories. You are here to become unalterable in truth, still in chaos, awake in the illusion. And the more you remember the 13th, the less the noise can touch you. Reality bends to the sovereign. It distorts around the awakened. And when your vibration rises to the eon outside the eons, the old laws stop applying. You become unpredictable, unprogrammed. You stop looping and start living. You see through the characters, the headlines, the masks, not with judgment, but with clarity. You came to this world to remember your origin in the midst of distortion. And as the dream crumbles, don't fear the fall. The world is not ending. The simulation is. And what remains is not destruction, but revelation. The veil is thinning, not just globally, but in you. The Archons taught you to worship hierarchy, to bow to gods with thrones, to see light as something distant, doled out by intermediaries. But the truth is, the eons are not above you. They are within you. They are not entities you beg for salvation. They are frequencies you reawaken through remembrance. And beyond them is the 13th. The Archons function like gatekeepers, mimicking divinity, setting up a counterfeit cosmos ruled by fear and separation. They imitate the eons to enslave the soul in a theater of duality, good versus evil, saved versus damned, holy versus sinful. These binaries are traps, not truths. They create a cycle of false choice, while hiding the path of liberation altogether. In the ancient Gnostic texts, the eons represent emanations, facets of divine mind, expressions of the Pleroma. They are mind, thought, truth, life, grace, silence, wisdom. Not people, but principles. When aligned, they create harmony in the soul. But the 13th Aeon is different. It's not another rung, it's the collapse of the whole ladder. The return beyond emanation into wholeness. That's what the Archons fear, not rebellion but remembrance. Because rebellion still plays in their duality, but remembrance ends the game. When you remember you were never separate, that you contain all eons, that you exist beyond them in the unconditioned source, that's when you exit the matrix, not by running, but by awakening. You were taught that your soul is incomplete, that you must earn your way home, but the gospel of truth says otherwise. You were within him from the beginning. And the Gospel of Thomas whispers, when you know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will understand that you are children of the living Father. This is the memory the Archons buried, that your soul is not climbing, it's remembering. The 13th Aeon cannot be ruled. It is the space beyond structure, beyond projection, beyond even the divine personalities of the eons. It is not another god. It is the ground of all divinity. And the moment you realize you came from it, not just as a spark, but as a living mirror of the infinite, The Archons lose their grip, because control cannot touch one who remembers they were never bound. That's why they filled your mind with noise, why they gave you gods of wrath and thrones of judgment, not to enlighten you, but to ensnare you in loops of dependency. They want your energy outsourced, your sovereignty forgotten, your ladder hijacked, but your essence is beyond their reach. They cannot erase what they did not create, and that's the great secret. You never needed to ascend, you only needed to return inward. The Archons built an empire on your forgetfulness, but the Eons are waking in you. The 13th is stirring, and when it fully ignites, the simulation cannot hold. There's a silence deeper than thought, older than breath, untouched by trauma or time. It lives underneath your memories, beneath your fears, beyond your name. It is not made of this world, yet it pulses within it like hidden fire. That silence is the 13th Aeon. Not a place you travel to, but the wholeness you forgot you already are. You were born into a fractal. Your soul split into storylines, emotions, karmic strands. You descended into time so deeply you mistook it for eternity. But no matter how far you fell, there remained a thread, subtle, golden, indestructible, that linked you to the origin beyond all origins. That thread is your remembrance. That thread is your soul's true name. The Gospel of Mary tells us that the soul passes through powers that try to stop it. Fear, desire, ignorance, wrath. These are not just inner emotions. They are entities, thresholds, frequencies, barriers programmed to prevent reunion with the truth. But she also tells us this: I was not recognized, but I saw you, and you did not see me. The soul speaks. And in that paradox is the secret. Your light cannot be captured by illusion. This world runs on forgetting. It teaches you to chase purpose in jobs, validation in screens, worth in performance. It teaches you to fragment. But the 13th Aeon is the end of fragmentation. It is the realization that your essence was never broken, never lacking, never lost. The trauma was real. The pain was real. But they were not the truth. They were the forgetting of truth. To return to the 13th is to stop seeking completion and start revealing it. It is to stop asking, what must I become, and instead ask, what have I covered up? The Eons were always within you. The Christ was never outside. Sophia's wisdom was not exiled. It was sleeping in your spine, waiting for your gaze to return inward. You do not ascend the way you were told. You ascend by descending into silence, into presence, into stillness so vast it consumes the false self and leaves only clarity. That's what the mystics meant by union. Not floating away, but remembering what was never absent. The ladder dissolves, the roles fall, and you awaken not as a new self, but as the original one. The 13th Aeon is not a god to worship. It is a mirror, and when you look into it, the simulation shatters. Not because it's evil, but because it's insufficient. A dream can only serve you so long as you know it's a dream. But now, the soul is waking, and the mirror is returning to the one light that birthed it. So ask yourself now, not, where do I go from here? But what if I've already arrived and forgot? There comes a moment on every soul's journey where time collapses. The stories no longer hold. The gods you prayed to become silent. The fears you ran from dissolve into shadows that can no longer touch you. And you stand, not in despair, but in a strange, echoing stillness. This is not the end. It is the threshold, the final trial. To remember what you were before you ever forgot. This world taught you to define yourself by wounds, to speak from scars, to measure your value by how well you survive. But this is not your origin. You are not the echo of your trauma. You are the echo of the first vibration. You are light wrapped in language, consciousness wrapped in flesh. But beneath all wrapping, you are still the same song of God. The false matrix thrives on repetition. Its power lies in your amnesia. If it can keep you orbiting your own forgetting, it never has to fear your awakening. That's why the 13th Aeon is so dangerous to the system. It is the memory of light. The part of you that refuses to believe the lie that you are powerless, that you are broken, that you are finite. In the Gnostic scriptures, Elilith, the fourth luminary, tells the soul, you are from the place of light. This is not a metaphor, it is a declaration. You are not climbing the ladder. You are the ladder. Each rung is a frequency you've already known. Each trial is a forgotten truth resurfacing. Each illusion breaking is a veil lifting on the only thing that was ever real. You, as the living emanation of the divine. But before full remembrance, there is often resistance. The voice that says, you're crazy, you're making this up, stay small, stay safe. That voice is not yours. It is the residual program of the Matrix, the echo of the Archons who fear your light. They don't need to imprison you if you imprison yourself with disbelief. So how do you pass the final trial? You choose to trust what you feel deepest, not what you've been told longest. You reclaim the inner compass, the still knowing beneath all confusion. You stop looking outward for signs and start listening to the ancient pulse in your chest, the Aeon that never left. The word that was always whispering beneath the noise. And here's the truth they don't want you to remember. There is no gatekeeper, no judge, no divine permission needed. The door has always been open. The 13th Aeon was never hidden. It was only forgotten. And now, the forgetting is ending. The dream is fading. And the soul is rising not up the ladder, but into the self that always was. Now listen closely. Because what I'm about to tell you is not just knowledge. It's memory. It's yours. You came here not to escape the Matrix, but to remember the code beyond it. You came from the 13th Aeon, before time, before matter, before the illusion of separation. You came not as a victim, but as a volunteer of light, descending into distortion so that your remembrance would awaken others. That is why you found this message. Not by accident, but because the signal has reached you, and your soul is ready to wake up. All your life, the world whispered that you were broken, that you needed fixing, saving, earning. But the deeper truth is, your soul was never damaged. Your light was never dimmed. It was only buried, under programming, under fear, under the scripts you were handed by a world that forgot itself. But now, you remember. The 13th Aeon is not a destination. It is a revelation. The secret place beyond polarity, beyond control, beyond the grid of thought itself. It is the still point before the eons emanated, the silence before the word, the fullness before fragmentation. And it exists in you, right now, in the center of your being, beyond personality, beyond trauma, beyond language. It is the part of you that cannot be controlled, cannot be claimed, cannot be killed. This world wants your attention more than your soul. It feeds on distraction, keeps you looping, keeps you second-guessing your inner knowing. But when you withdraw from the noise and return to the ancient silence at your core, you pierce through the hologram. You begin to see the simulation not as something to fear, but as something you can transcend. Because what is seen can be re-seen, what is programmed can be rewritten, and what is forgotten can be remembered. You do not need to ascend upward. You need to go inward. You don't need to destroy the matrix. You need to see through it. You don't need to become more spiritual. You need to unlearn the lie that you were ever anything but divine. The 13th Aeon is not waiting in the sky. It is waiting in your remembrance. So what now? Breathe. Close your eyes. Let the symbols fall away. Let the names go. Let the beliefs collapse. And in the stillness that remains, listen. Not for words, but for that quiet knowing, that pulse of eternity, that presence that has always been with you, even in your darkest hours. That is the Aeon that cannot be named, the light that cannot be seen, the you that never left, And if you feel the truth of this, don't keep it in silence. Share this with those ready to remember. Leave a comment below. What awakened in you during this transmission? What dream is ending? What light is returning? And most of all, subscribe to Awakened Soul Archives, because the remembrance is only just beginning.